Well, good morning and welcome to SBConnect, where we connect to and educate for the world of work. Today, we have dreamers, visionaries, and leaders in the house. We have Kaylin Yerber Ruiz and Alexandra Jacessa, both former DVL Project Scholarship recipients. Well, let me tell you a little bit about DVL. Under the pioneering of Regina Bell, founder of DVL, Dreamers, Visionaries, and Leaders, they were dedicated to honoring African-American contributions to our American history. In 2013, DVL expanded efforts to celebrate and recognize Hispanic culture through the recognition of Hispanic Heritage Month. DVL has honored 188 individuals located in the high desert for their professional accomplishments and community service, and approximately 60 high desert college Brown students. Today, you're going to hear the wonderful journey of Alexandra and Kaylin as they discuss their academic, civic, and personal interests that they pursued in high school, the motivation behind their current post-secondary academic goals and aspirations, and the significance of the DVL Scholarship Award as women of color, and the resilience that they exercise across their academic journey. So welcome to today's SBConnect session titled DVL Project, Victor Valley Champions and Legacy Leaders. Welcome, Kaylin and Alexandra.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for having us here. Thank you, Regina, Michael, everyone on the DVL team, and everyone behind the scenes, and to everyone watching the recording. Glad you could carve out some time to watch this fruitful dialogue. I am a first-year PhD student at UC Berkeley. I graduated from, I'm a first-year PhD student at UC Berkeley studying African-American studies with a focus in public policy and sociology. I graduated from UC Santa Barbara in 2020, so I was the first pandemic class. I thought I was going to be the only one to say that, but we're 3 years in, so I feel like it's a collective experience that we can share. And I also graduated in Black Studies and philosophy while I was there. But prior to coming to UC Santa Barbara, I am a Black woman of immigrant parents from a small desert town, Apple Valley. Where it had the most transformative experience, getting to work with the community, being a proud Granite Hills alum. And I came across the Dreamers, Visionaries, and Leaders organization through my own family, who were honorees, that just opened a plethora of experiences and understanding and opportunities of what it means to be a young Black woman coming of age in the high desert, what resources were there for me, and to see that there was this amazing organization that brought Black voices, that brought folks of color, that brought so many different organizers and leaders in the community that don't often get their sunlight in Apple Valley and in the high desert, really propelled me to thinking about what I could do to contribute to the organization, and led to me to apply to the Bishop Ruffin Scholarship, which I could talk about a little bit later.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. It's nice to virtually meet you. My name is Kaylin. I am currently a student at Boston University and pursuing my Master's of Social Work. I'm specifically looking at community organization and kind of how the arts can integrate into community healing. I went to undergrad at UC Riverside, where I got a bachelor's in studio art and a bachelor's in media and cultural studies. And I'm also from the high desert. And I graduated from University Prep in 2015 in Victorville. For me, college wouldn't have been accessible, especially attending a UC would not have been possible without the financial support of local organizations. So it was really dependent on me applying to scholarships throughout my senior year, and just hoping that I could have enough to go to school. So with the DVL scholarship, I was really empowered to see that there was an actual arts-based scholarship. You don't see a lot of those when applying. And just to see that art was valued as a community component was really important to me. And so I was really honored to receive a DVL scholarship in both 2015 and 2016, and was just really grateful that DVL embraced my family and I, and was there to support me throughout my whole undergraduate journey. And, you know, we've remained in contact since in higher education. So that's been a really great opportunity. And I've just been really grateful for their support.
Nice. Yeah, and you know, speaking about support, I think a lot of that comes from the vision and kind of work that we had and what things fell into our lap. You know, I strongly feel like growing up in the high desert had its challenges, but in a lot of ways shaped a perspective and vision of where I wanted to go. I, you know, was one of few Black children in my elementary school. I was one of the few Black folks in my AP honors courses in high school. It wasn't until I got to college, really, that I had the opportunity to understand what collective vision, what collective organizing looks like, what collective empowerment looks like. And it wasn't until I got to Santa Barbara that I was able to look back and see what DVL was doing, which were those exact same principles amongst other Black led organizations or ally adjacent organizations. When I, you know, fortunately, despite growing up in an Ethiopian household, there are definitely stereotypes of, you know, you'll be an engineer, you'll be a lawyer, you'll be all of these different things, which is a very important, you know, place of support that I want to recognize, because I think for a lot of children, it's a privilege to have that in the household, but at the same time, it can be a hindrance when trying to find your voice and trying to find your creative talent. And I'm very fortunate, and I'll shout out my parents who are on the call for giving me that kind of creative sandbox to try different things, to get involved in different things, and to really allow me to put my hands in places that I think I wouldn't have traditionally had the chance to, given the limited resources that were in our community, especially when I was growing up. I loved to read. I was an avid reader. I also really like to watch SpongeBob. So I feel like there was a balance in my childhood. But I always joke now into adulthood talking about how, you know, I'm the byproduct of the defunded arts program process, you know, through state policy, which was a large part of what drove my interest. You know, I love to paint, I love to cook, and I felt like that in of itself was an artistic ability that I wanted to kind of sharpen. And as I navigated middle school, I was at, you know, the Academy for Academic Excellence, AAE, for a year. And while I was there, it was like going from a fishbowl, a private small elementary school, to a little pond, and then from a pond to Granite Hills, which was like the ocean. And there I was able to get involved in Key Club. I got involved in so many different after school organizations that, you know, when I was growing up, my dad had me take hot food, warm meals to the homeless, and kind of getting to propel that work into high school showed me that I had a distinct, very Black, you know, at the time I couldn't name it, like radical organizing perspective that was driven by lack thereof resources that, you know, through community piled that together for me. But through that, you know, I did actually let my academics suffer. Although I got the good grades on paper, I didn't develop the skills that I needed to be a good student. I just did what I needed to do to get by. That meant sacrificing sleep. That meant things that it was not sustainable in the long run until I got to my junior, senior year, when I was thinking about colleges and I wanted to do sports. And there were so many things that were across my plate that I decided that I had to be honest with myself. And seeing all the great things and all of the folks around me that were getting scholarships from DVL, who were becoming honorees, who were volunteering at the hospital, it was kind of clear to me that I had to work on myself first before I like gave to others, right? You can't pour from an empty cup. And it was through that opportunity of just having mentors who allowed me to check in with myself and say, like, how are you feeling, right? Like this creative sandbox I had was a really great opportunity to create very early on self-soothing or, you know, de-stressing techniques that at the time I didn't know that's what they were, but they were my go-to, like cooking. I love to cook. That largely came from the fact that I grew up in a household watching my grandmother and my mom, my father, my aunt, everyone cook, but also it became a place for myself to find that investment in my emotional and personal well-being. Which has now been my rock into college and to graduate school. I would have to say though, you know, a lot of people say like, wow, you're so motivated, you're so talented, and that's to my own horn, but I'm saying it because it actually is a reflection of the village that invested in me. You know, when I couldn't get picked up from after school stuff, my aunt was there to help me. There was a family friend who was there to help us. And that dynamic gave me exposure to different personalities, to different outlets that really, I think, gave me a strong understanding of what it meant to have a community, what it meant to have a village. And going into undergrad, especially leaving home and going somewhere like Santa Barbara, which isn't too far, right? But it's far enough, where it's a new community, it's a new type of, place that everyone's trying to find themselves. And I think the skills of knowing what to do for myself, to check in with myself, like watering my own kind of cup. It is still a work in progress. It's not refined, but I would say it's a lot more focused. Has been something that I think propelled my academic interest. Like, you can love what you do, but if you're not resting, if you're not eating, if you're not doing what we think are very mundane, but also very important and simple tasks, it's very easy to be burnt out and to kind of not enjoy the thing that you're doing. Or if you enjoy it, you can only bring half of what you are. So in that, I think, academically, it's a reflection of the consistent discipline and dedication and love and honesty that my community kind of put into me, and also learning what the strengths of my own voice were. It's also very easy to get swayed by like what people think you should do and how you should do it. But I knew that if I didn't own it myself, and I'm still learning this into graduate school, if I didn't own this myself, I wouldn't have had that opportunity to identify what that looks like and how I want to engage in it. So yeah, I think there's a lot of things that were foundational that now in retrospect, I can, look at every little piece and just identify how significant it was. But the most important things, I think, was the ability to check in with myself, was the ability to nourish my body, both spiritually and like physically with food, which I love. And also be able to have that village of support. Now into my first year of my doctoral program, most of my friends from undergrad are all over the state. Most of my family's all over the country. And, like everyone who's kind of trying to navigate what that looks like in a pandemic, FaceTime calls have been like the basis of my phone bill. And so I, routinely try to keep up those traditions and practices of checking in. And yes, you can text, but try to do a phone call on a birthday or something along those lines. So I think that's where I have had my legacy fulfill the vision of where I, see myself going and where it's brought me to.
I think you brought up a really good point of well-being. And I think one thing that the scholarship showed me and the organization showed me was that there were people that weren't only invested in my academic success, in my career, but also my well-being. So when I was checking in with my mentors, it just wasn't like, how are your grades? How are your jobs? And it was more than that. And it was really conversations asking how I was doing, adjusting to being away from home for the first time, and just being around so many new people that maybe I wasn't exposed to in the high desert, so I think that was really great for me personally in my growth. I come from a pretty artistic family, I would say. I had teenage parents, so we were actively involved in local small art initiatives, and they were a part of the punk scene. So, we were always going to shows and getting to see small bands and small artists. And so I've always really grown up around that. And I think the first instance that I saw that art could have an impact on a community is LACMA, the LA County Museum of Art, had an exhibit when I was about 6 called Art After the Chicano Movement, or the Mexican American Movement. And to see the emotional impact that art could have on a 6-year-old for me was life-changing. And from there, I've really strongly believed in the ability of art to help heal communities and help advocate for communities. And I think that it was just so special to find an organization that equally valued the contributions of art to society as a whole. And I am going to go back to just DVL as an organization, and just the support and investment they gave to me and other recipients. not just academically and career-wise, but just making sure that we were doing okay in college for the first time. And they really instilled in me the belief that I could be an agent of change, because of all of the individuals that the legacy individuals that we were following after. So I received the Miss Leona Greiner scholarship 2 years in a row. And for me, I think that was very important to see the impact of a woman of color and within the arts community. And the way that was highlighted for me. So I think just DVL has been incredibly helpful throughout my undergraduate time and throughout my postgraduate time. And it's something I'll always be grateful for, that investment and support in my career, in my education, and in my personal growth. I think from here we have a video for us, a DVL video, if we're going to go into that.
I'm a dreamer, I'm a visionary, I'm a leader, I'm extraordinary. The light can get you down sometimes, it seems. I'll never let it take away my dream. I'm living my life, always striving. My head's held high, and there is no denying. I will not stop, nothing fails but a try. I'll reach the top, keep my eye to the sky. I'm a dreamer, I'm a visionary, I'm a leader, I'm extraordinary. The light can get you down sometimes, it seems. I'll never let it take away my dream. I stay positive, fill my life with laughter. Peace is how I live, joy is what I'm after. My heart's content, love is my inspiration, and it's heaven sent. I know my destination. I'm a dreamer, I'm a visionary, I'm a leader, I'm extraordinary. The light can get you down sometimes, it seems. I'll never let it take away my dream. I'm a dreamer, The light can get you down sometimes, it seems. I'll never let it take away my dream. No pessimist can blind me with discouraging attacks. Distractions can't blind me. I won't let nothing hold me back. I'm a leader, I'm a leader. Extraordinary. The light can get you down sometimes, it's insane. I'll never let it take away my dream.
Every time I see that video, I get very emotional, and I hear that song, I get very emotional, for a variety of reasons. But I remember I was a 2016 DVL honoree, and that song, came at a time when I felt like, or like when I heard it right at the award ceremony, when I had first heard it, it was in a very tough time. I was waiting to hear back from universities. I, got some rejections. I got to celebrate all the things that I had done, despite, thinking it was a very lonely road. And so that song just gets me emotional every time. So sorry. But yeah, so, one message I'd like to kind of share with you in the spirit of emotion, right, is, I received the Bishop Ruffin Scholarship, which was such a, I felt like I was so seen on paper. The scholarship was intended to, demonstrate to somebody who's committed to serving in educational institutions, nonprofit organizations, and really, right, putting forward the mission of people of color. And for me, I knew at the time when I was a senior in high school, I was like, oh, I'm going to go to law school. I'm going to use law school to change the world. And, after talking to some lawyers when I was an undergrad, that wasn't necessarily the case, and that there was a variety of opportunities to do exactly that, right? And I came to learn that the doctoral route is exactly where I could do that. And I'm still thinking about pursuing a JD, but I say all of that because one message that I would share with current high school students is you are nowhere without your village. And even if your village seems like one person, that one person alone could take you so far. I think it's really easy for a lot of our youth to feel very alone and very isolated in the process, to not feel seen, to not feel heard. And that was very much my experience growing up, particularly being a young Black woman coming of age in an academic setting that was very racially divided. Of course, again, speaking very retrospectively, I didn't know that at the time. I just like, why do I have to work so hard? Which is very metaphorical to my larger experiences. So a challenge that I would share with, current high school, or a message that I would share with current high school students is to look around you. And even if it doesn't seem like you have a sea of people, if it's a guardian, if it's a parent, if it's a pet, if it's a book, turn to those things for inspiration, because it's very easy to lose yourself in trying to fit a mold that isn't true to who you are. And I feel as though the Bishop Ruffin Scholarship that I applied for and received very much allowed me to stand on the shoulders of those giants who paved a way through these institutions, who perhaps wasn't interested in fitting the mold of being a talented 10th or the only Black person in that space, but using those resources and those tools, right, to dismantle Massa's house. Or I know Audre Lorde has some conflicting words with that, but I think it's very important for us to take inventory of those resources and utilize them to our best advantage. And now into a doctoral program, I've come to learn how hard it is to get to higher education, especially from places like the high desert, especially if you don't have those support and those resources. So I think, yes, you should always push yourself to college, but there's also nothing wrong with going to community college, and there's nothing wrong with starting small and starting local, because the investment is for yourself. It's not for those around you. And that message took me very far, because into college, I came to realize, like, if I'm not investing in myself, if I'm not pushing myself where I want to be, I will regret all of the time that I wasted trying to kill somebody else's dream. So I just constantly encourage you to take inventory of what you need. And if the road hasn't been paved, there are tools around you to help pave it, even if it feels like, you're in an empty garage.
I think that's a really great point. I had no idea in high school that there were so many resources in the high desert and so many organizations and communities that truly want you to succeed. And I think DVL has been one of those groups for me that just really shone a light on the desert and all of the great things it has to offer. So I think even for me, in my first year of college, I had a difficult time just balancing work and school. I was working 3 jobs at the time, and just having a difficult time trying to make ends meet financially and pay for my school. And my parents did as much as they could, but I also wanted to make sure I was contributing. And I remember reaching out to Miss Regina and asking if they would consider taking a college student as an applicant, and she graciously said yes, and I was able to receive my second DVL scholarship. But it just goes to show that there is a community here that is willing to help you. And when you do need help, please feel free to utilize, your parents, your family, teachers, people at school, community organizations. They want you to succeed, and they're going to be there in any capacity that they can to help you succeed. Again, in this specific scenario, this is the only organization that I've worked with that has been so invested long-term in the impact I'm going to have on my community, because they truly believe that people like me and Alexandra are going to have a lasting impact on our communities, and they want to help with that as much as they can. So I think my biggest takeaway for you all is just to know that your community is here for you, and we're here to support you, and don't be afraid to ask for help, because there will be a point when you might need help, and And I just want you all to know that there are people here in the high desert that care for you and want you to feel supported. So, and I think with that, we do have another DVL video of scholarship recipients from last year.
My name is McKaylee Moore, the 2021 Anasugi Legacy Scholarship recipient. I stand on the shoulders of Miss Anasugi. Thank you, DVL, Miss Anasugi, and family.
I'm Brianna Pinedo, 2021 Garner C. Morris Legacy Scholarship recipient. I stand on the shoulders of Mr. Garner C. Morris. Thank you, DVL, Mr. Garner Cordell Morris, and family.
And then we have Isaiah King.
I'm Isaiah King, 2021 Garner C. Morris Legacy Scholarship recipient. I stand on the shoulders of Mr. Garner C. Morris. Thank you, DVL, Mr. Garner Morris, and family.
I'm Ishan Subramaniam, 2021 Bishop Nathaniel Ruffin Legacy Scholarship recipient. I stand on the shoulders of Bishop Nathaniel Ruffin. Thank you, DVL Bishop Nathaniel Ruffin and family.
And congratulate and award Ms. Martha Huerta.
I'm Martha Huerta, 2021 DVL Honorees Legacy Scholarship recipient. I stand on the shoulders of the DVL Honorees. Thank you, DVL and DVL Honorees.
First annual. And that's what you're doing.
I'm Taylor Drayton, third place 2021 DVL Law and Justice Scholarship recipient. I stand on the shoulders of the champion of justice and change. Thank you, DVL. Thank you, Mr. Don and Mr. Steve.
I'm going to ask Natalie Hernandez Valencia. Did I get it right?
On June 19, 2021, DVL honored the 2021 Legacy Scholarship and Award recipients with a special reception. Parents, participants, DVL Legacy Scholarship namesake families and community members also celebrated these outstanding and brilliant young people. 18 student awards were provided, totaling over $10,000 this year. Thank you to everyone who helped to make this possible. It indeed takes a village. These young people represent the best of who we are. Not all of our students were able to join us. However, we acknowledge in their absence the following scholarship and award recipients:
We have just now come to our Q&A session, and I encourage our participants to prepare questions. Please go ahead and enter them into the chat box. And as you're doing that, I want to bring your attention to the link that's been placed in the chat box. High Desert educators, please refer students to the website www.dvlproject.com/scholarships, and there you will find the process to recommend and apply for the 2022 DVL scholarship this year. And so I am going to start off our Q&A with a question for Alexandra. Alexandra, how would you encourage current Black students in high desert communities to overcome and prepare for the world of work?
That's a very real question. I can give you the academic perspective, right? Because that's kind of where my specialty is, but also my lived experiences. You know, I think growing up in the high desert now is such a different time than when I was there. You know, the remnants of the last presidential election created a very deep dialogue between a younger group of people that just was not there when I was growing up, or if it was very covert. It was very hidden. And so to grow up in a place now where you know how your neighbors look at you, how your community looks at you, which is inevitable to the kind of truth that was already there. That in mind, I think, you know, current Black students, children, teenagers, young adults have to support each other. Like without our community, without solidarity, truly, we can't overcome those struggles that I think are very much pressing now more than ever. What does that look like? Supporting Black-owned businesses, you know, listening to your homie SoundCloud mixtape, I don't know, you know, corny things like that, but also really finding resources. I mean, case in point, DVL brought together a gang of Black leaders across the entire high desert that I would have not known about, you know, just by general passing, despite my involvements in the community. So whether that looks like creating your own organization or, you know, doing a little home cookie shop, doing a Black market by VBC. I mean, there are so many creatives and chefs and educators and leaders who are doing a variety of different things. And I think the support that we need is pulling each other together. If that looks like basketball, you know, after basketball practice or after soccer practice, you go get some smoothies at Jamba Juice or juice it up. I think it starts with small actions like that that really have a snowballing effect into what support and community looks like.
Well, thank you for that response, Alexandra. And in the spirit of pulling things together, I have a question now for Kaylin. How do you reflect your Chicano heritage in your artwork? And maybe you can describe your artwork.
Yeah, that's something I had missed earlier. I'm currently a graphic designer. So while I'm going to school, I'm a graphic designer for various nonprofits. So I work alongside the ACLU of Southern California. I work for a local nonprofit, a nonprofit in Rhode Island that's worried about maternal health care for Black, Indigenous, and women of color, and kind of improving those maternal health outcomes. So I work there as well. But I think the biggest thing for me in my identity is to advocate for marginalized communities in the work that I represent in the contracts that I take on. So I am very strict about the work I take and making sure that the organizations I work with align with my values of empowering others and advocating for groups of people. So I think that's the biggest thing for me, is just to make sure that no matter what I'm doing, I'm trying to empower groups of people and just make sure that I'm advocating for folks on a larger scale. So it's more than, you know, just doing work that makes me happy, but I want to make sure that with others is also a really big part of my career.
Thank you for that response. I have another question. This question is for Alexandra. What specific cultural societal differences did you realize after attending school in Berkeley?
Wow, that's a great question. So Berkeley, so NorCal versus SoCal is just starkly different environments. That's just such a great question. I am now coming to learn, especially, as COVID restrictions are getting lifted and people are going back outside, unfortunately to say, but, since the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and many others in 2020 and beyond, being Black is cool now. Like the aesthetic is, at a forefront. I see it this is not to police what women wear, but I've seen like non-Black women wear, like cornrows and like braids and passion twists. And that was definitely a cultural shock, especially coming into the Bay, because I had to come to learn that this is not the territory where I was raised in, where this is not as common as it is, in Southern California. So the physical cultural aesthetic was definitely most jarring to me. But a part of that I really have come to love about the Bay Area and what cultural differences that are there is the diversity of Blackness and how it's appreciated and presented to the community. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm a child of Ethiopian immigrants, and I did not grow up in a predominantly Ethiopian community. You can count on a hand how many Ethiopians are in the high desert even to this day, and that, or in general of African descent, and across the continent. And so coming into the Bay Area to see that kind of diversity of Blackness, even outside of the continent's context, right? Like, you have Black Dutch people, so there's a lot of different engagements for me that I think was very jarring and exciting at the same time. The part that I think has been the biggest cultural shock to me is like, I'm living in the Bay after the hyphy era also, right? And so like that coolness of the E40, Mac Dre kind of energy is still very much alive and still very much present. And it's something that I've come to like, I think when you move to a new place, you want to like reclaim. I'm still a Lakers fan and I'm still very much loyal to SoCal teams, but I think that definitely has been an adjustment for me of how Blackness is displayed and appreciated. It's just so different. And that with Indigenous and Latinx cultures as well. So it's definitely a lot more apparent. It's definitely a lot harder to navigate because I thought I was comfortable in my Ethiopian identity, but I've come to learn that like that in of itself is a spectrum. There are people who were born here like myself who can speak the language and read it. And I decided to take on classes now as an independent study to learn how to read and write, my cultural language. And so there's a lot of different, I think, differences or cultural schisms that are kind of apparent to me now that were not apparent before. But especially in the Bay Area, with the tech era taking over, the diversity is also being pushed out at alarming rates. So I definitely think there's a lot to learn, and I decided to take a back seat to kind of take inventory of those things.
Thank you so much. We've come to our last two questions of the session today. This next question is for Kaylin. What are you passionate about in representing your art? What's your passion?
I specifically love to work with survivors of sexual assault or intimate partner violence and mental health and kind of that intersection. So while I love working with these other organizations, my heart really lies with working with survivors and helping them to see their brilliance and see their resilience and just all that they have to offer after trauma, essentially. So I think that's been the biggest passion of mine, probably since undergraduate, to make time and space for that kind of work, even if it's not with a client. I'm always taking the time to advocate for survivors personally. And sorry, I'm just seeing Regina's no. So I'm always taking time to do that personally and to create projects myself. And I also do things like I own an Etsy shop, so I'm a small business owner, and everything I make in that personal time is has survivors in mind. and just sending a message that people are resilient and strong, and just letting that community know that there's one person that's thinking of them at least, and that's proud of them, and all that they're accomplishing, and all that they've been through. So that's been a really strong passion point for me.
And I overheard you say you are a small business owner. What was your motivation into entrepreneurship?
My family has also been small business owners. From the time that they've immigrated over here, they've had a construction company that's gone through generations. And so I've kind of grown up around small businesses. And I just wanted to contribute in that sense of creating at a smaller local level. And also just being able to make my work accessible to, again, survivors all across the world through Etsy. That has been really important for me as well.
Awesome. Last question. Alexandra, what skills do you recommend students develop in their plans to enter post-secondary study? It's one thing to be ready for high school, one thing to be ready for work, but college is a different beast. What would you recommend for students?
Absolutely. I've been fortunate to be molded by the minds of just incredible Black women in particular, and Regina being one of them as well. I want to also give that personal recognition. I'd have to say it's the mental fortitude of not compromising your dignity, your integrity, and your joy. And it sounds a lot, it goes a lot deeper than what it sounds like, for that matter. I say that because, like I said, into high school, it's very easy to prom queen and get, my dad used to say this a lot when I was younger, is like, get distracted by the glitter in front of you, and not think about what that looks like in the long term. And, I'm very fortunate that, I had drama in high school. I feel like I had the coming of age experience that most people experience going through high school. And I had my eyes on a bigger prize. And I knew that for me to get there, I couldn't compromise my integrity. And I couldn't compromise who I was as a person, although I didn't know who I was looked like. I knew that, I didn't want to, take any crap, for lack of a better word, from anyone for that matter. And I know that not a lot of Black women and Black folks and folks of color in general are offered that kind of luxury, but I was fortunate to see that standing fierce in that, and standing fierce in, if you want to go to a HBCU, go to an HBCU, because what's meant for you, nothing can stop it getting to you. And I strongly believe that in preparing to go to post-secondary institutions or even into graduate school, I like the money talks, scholarships talk, but if your heart is set somewhere or something speaks to you, is to not compromise that. And I think a lot of the times as folks of color, and particularly Black folks, we're always told to kind of speak on our resiliency, but I want to see us into a place of joy. Like I said, I've been fortunate to be around Black futurists, Black folks who are forward thinkers and not just thinking of the contemporary, really calling on Afrofuturism as a place of us to be expressive and be free and live in our joy and truth. And so I say that because if I had known that in high school, to tap into the creativity elements that were there, rather as a place of self-care, but as a place of professionalism, or as a place that I see myself going into, I know that would have watered a whole different avenue that I know is still there for me to explore. And has been very integral into my work now. But I think if I had known that going into high school, thinking about what brings me joy, and really watering that, I think would be such a forward place of thinking than to thinking about, if you just persevere through this, PWI or predominantly white institution and you bite the bullet, you'll make it out at the end of everybody else. I love that resiliency, and I think that's also commendable, but I also think we're in a place now where we can center our joy and our dignity. And I really hope that young folks today can tap into that a lot earlier than when I did, to really be able to propel a different journey for themselves.
Well, Kaylin, Alexandra, thank you so much for your participation in today's session. You are both truly Victor Valley champions and continue to be legacy leavers. I could not end this session without honoring Regina Witherspoon Bell for her pioneering young minds that you see here on this session. She's a gem in the Inland Empire, not just in the high desert community. And so I want to say thank you also to the educators from all over Inland Empire for joining us today on the DVL Project Victor Valley Champions and Legacy Leavers session. This concludes our session today. You can catch up with us again at sbcalliance.org, where you can find our next session where we will help you connect to and educate for the world of work. Happy Black History Month, and talk to you later. Thank you.
Thank you.